is a fat, slimy, greasy maggot. Stop right there. I want you all to ask yourselves, at that point, what are you going to do? You going to wrap it back up, turn it upside down, and start taking a bite out of the other end of it? Of course not. You're going to throw the whole thing away. Here's your transition. This case is infested with lying maggots. Don't turn it upside down and take a bite out of the cocaine end of it. You throw the whole thing away. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In a Harris County tradition, we were listening at the door of the jury room with one Kelly Siegler, who was the chief at the time, and we had one black guy in that jury, about a 25-year-old black male, and they weren't back there talking about presumption of innocence. All we could hear at the door was this black kid saying, "What about that maggot on the candy bar? What about that maggot on the candy bar?" And they don't remember the law stuff. They remember the maggot on the candy bar. And I'm betting right now that in the 20 years since I used that, those folks hadn't had a Snickers bar since. And by the way, Kelly looked at me and said, "That's the last time I put a black guy on the jury." And I bet you're really surprised to hear that. Piece of work, that one. Okay, folks, here's another technique that I got from writing college essays. I learned this in an English composition course. Heard Dick DeGuerin talk about it once. You've heard primacy-recency. People remember the first thing that's told to them, and they remember the last thing that's told to them. So when I write an essay, my best point is my first point out of the chute. My second best point is the last thing in the paper or the speech. And then you just go back and forth. Your third best point should be your second up the top. Very important. The first thing you say has got to hook them. The last thing you say has got to be really strong too. Go for that. Primacy and recency. Okay, let me pass on some metaphors. I think we've gotten to the part that the speech was billed as comedy in the courtroom. Let me give you all a bunch of really fun jokes and metaphors that you can use in trial. And I've been using them with pretty good success. And this is a really fun one here too. This is called A Lady in a Blindfold. Y'all familiar with The Lady in the Blindfold? I tried a case in the 185th once against a certain red-headed judge in town who will go nameless but not blameless. And it was an awful case. My client was charged of raping his 9-year-old daughter. And it was a hotly contested trial because the parents were separated. The little girl came home from her visitation with dad on the weekend, and she had panties full of goo that her mother took to Texas Children's Hospital and promptly threw them in the garbage can. We don't know why. I asked her, "Ma'am, don't you think that was important? You ever heard of DNA?" "I don't know no DNA." "You ever heard of O.J. Simpson?" "I don't know no O.J. Simpson." It's a weird trial. And you can use this in any case you try, folks. It's kind of a nice opening salvo. The Lady in a Blindfold works like this. You say to the jury, "On your way into court, y'all might have noticed the civil courthouse on top of that big old rotunda, there's a lady in a blindfold. You've seen her before. She holds the scales of justice in one hand, and she raises her other hand high, and she swears to you and every juror in every county and every courthouse in the country. She swears that my client is innocent. We call that lady the Lady in a Blindfold. She's standing on top of the courthouse holding the scales of justice. And until some government lawyer can come in here and prove to you that that lady is a liar, you are duty bound to find my client not guilty." This certain red-headed judge got up and objected. "Your Honor, we heard from no lady in a blindfold." The jury laughed in her face. Rattle their cage, folks. That's what this article's all about. Rattle the prosecutor's cage. There's tons of great guerrilla tactics in that article. Sit in their seat. Knock their books off the table. Cunningham once hired me to try a case against another certain sitting judge. He said, "Wayne, I'll try the case. Just fuck with him." Okay? And it was in that, if y'all remember the old courthouse on the 8th floor, there was a courtroom the size of one of these tables. It was a closet. We had to share a counsel table with the prosecutor. The jury was within arm's reach. and I was knocking his books off the table. During his cross-ex, I'm sitting there tapping on the table, going like this, objecting all the time. He grabbed a hold of my necktie, tried to choke me halfway through the trial. But the point is, rattle their cage. Guerilla tactics, that's what this is about. There's so many things you can do. Show up early and sit in their seats. Watch what happens. Your Honor, he's in my seat. Where does it say that's their seat? I call them government lawyers. Y'all have heard that one. They're not my learned colleague or the state's attorneys. They're government lawyers. Who likes the government? And who likes lawyers? That's what they are. They're government lawyers. I tried a case once against a Harris County DA. In a 10-minute argument, she must have spent 5 or 6 minutes saying, I'm going to have to call my mom and tell her I'm the government. Rattle their cage, folks. They're not used to it. Now, yeah, it can border on a personal attack. Don't do a personal attack. Do an impersonal attack. You're not attacking that prosecutor. You're attacking what they're doing to your innocent client. And when you call them my learned colleague or you show them any respect in court, you're telling that jury, oh, I'm friends with this guy who's trying to railroad my innocent client. You're not friends with them. You hate their fish-eating guts. They're trying to lock up your innocent client. When you buddy up with that prosecutor and yuck it up with him during the breaks, the jury sees that. And then they think your ire in court is all for show. These are the evil sons of bitches who are trying to lock up your innocent client and treat them as such. They're no better, and in fact, they're much worse. So anyway, don't buddy-buddy with these people, folks. If they're not going to be friends with you because if you're doing your job, you don't want to be friends with them, believe me. Okay, folks, another reason to rattle their cage like that is to contrast your style to theirs. We've seen Harris County DAs, they bore the crap out of these juries. They get up there with the same canned bullshit, shake them up, tell some jokes, wake this jury up. Make sure they're appropriate jokes. I'm not good at telling non-offensive jokes, but it can be done. Let me give you some beautiful words that were passed on from a very famous San Francisco lawyer, now dead, Edward Bennett Williams. And I really like this. You use this in a situation where you've caught the key witness in one little lie, okay? Testified for 3 days, told one little lie, and you caught him. Try this one. It's very prosaic. It's quite poetic. Like a grandfather clock that strikes 13, it calls into question all that has come before. Isn't that beautiful? I really love that one. There's another way to say it. You know, you can't shine a sneaker. That's pretty nice. I prefer you can't polish a turd. Okay, but you might not want to use that one. Here's a Barry Scheck line right out of the OJ case. How many worms do you have to find in a bowl of spaghetti before you stop eating it? You don't have to destroy their whole case. Find that one little thread. Play to their natural propensity to lie. They want to lie. They're trained to lie. Give them the opportunity to lie. Don't be scared of lying witnesses. They're our best friends. They give us a chance to catch them lying. Turn that trial from how guilty your client is into what lying sons of bitches the state's witnesses are. That's what you want to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about how guilty their client is. That's their job. Here's another fun one, the scorpion and the turtle. Oh, ever heard this one? It's kind of cheesy, but I like it. It's a story about one day on the side of the river, there's a scorpion and a turtle. And the scorpion says, hey, Mr. Turtle, I can't swim. Let me climb up on your back and you swim across the river for me. I need to get to the other side of the river. And the turtle says, wait a minute, if I let you climb up on my back, how do I know you're not going to sting me? And the scorpion says, hey, if I sting you, you're going to drown and I can't swim. I'm going to drown with you. So the turtle thinks, all right, climb up. Scorpion climbs up on his back. They jump in the water. The turtle's swimming across the river. And sure enough, the scorpion stings the turtle. And they start to drown. And the turtle says, hey, why'd you do that? Now you're going to drown too. And the scorpion says, I guess it's just my nature. Why would a snitch lie? It's just their nature. Why would a cop bend the truth? It's just his nature. We don't have to catch him in a lie. We just need to paint them as liars because that's what they are. And if you can't go that far with the smoke and gun and mendacity, at least you've got incompetence because they're incompetent in pretty much every case. But don't call them a liar unless you can prove it. He's mistaken is a lot softer to sell, and don't say anything you can't prove. Okay, folks, when the prosecutor's giving their argument, don't sit there and listen to him. You're giving him credibility. He's up there telling this bullshit to the jury. If you're wrapped in attention, what you're telling the jury is, oh, this is important, you better listen. When he's up there talking, you're packing your bags. You're talking to your client. You do anything but pay attention to him. But of course, you need to pay attention to him, because when he gets to his high moment, that's when you get up and object. Pull the wind out from his sails. Pull the carpet out from under him. Fuck with these people. They fuck with us. Do them right back. Rattle their cages. They're wrapped too tight. They don't handle it well. They're not used to this sort of aggression. Now, if that's not your style, don't do it. But whatever you do, don't let them play you. You ought to be playing them. So how do you rattle the DA's cage? Well, there's lots of ways to do it. Here's a fun one. I often write those same post-it notes like I was talking about earlier, but I'll have responses to their objections. Objection, Your Honor. When the judge overrules that objection, turn to the jury and say, they're trying to hide this fact from you, but the judge says you're allowed to consider it. Watch him stop objecting, folks. Don't just let them have their way. Make a sidebar. If they call you down for it, tough. You can live with it. And by the way, when the judge is riding your butt like a donkey, play that for sympathy too. The juries, as long as you're not acting like a horse's ass, you can get a lot of sympathy from juries if a judge is a son of a bitch. Let me give you a great example of that. Jimmy James, rest his soul, fastest judge in the West, used to be in the 209th before Judge McSpadden. I once tried a true habitual with a crack pipe residue case. 25 years they wanted on a residue case. And the DA came up to me before trial, nice guy, long gone, Frank Jesse. Frank said, from Missouri, I think. He said, Wayne, I'm going to waive my opening. Judge James hates openings. I wouldn't give one to him. He'll get all over you. So we picked a jury, and Judge James says, Mr. Jesse, put on your first witness. So I got up and I said, Your Honor, wait a minute. I've got an opening here. He goes, you want to open? Okay, you got 30 seconds. Go. He used to do that pistol gesture with him. Go. So I had planned this, and I'm a fast-talking fool, folks, but I got up there, very slowly walked up to the jury box, and I said very deliberately, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will remember for the rest of your entire life the day you held this young man's life in your hands. So if it takes an extra 5 minutes or 15 minutes to find justice, don't leave the courthouse wondering for the rest of your life if you imprison an innocent man. Sit down, Mr. Heller, your 30 seconds are up. I refused to sit down. He instructed the bailiff to come over and escort me to my seat. And of course, after the not guilty verdict, I had 3 or 4 jurors come up to me and say, we felt so sorry for you the way that judge was treating you throughout the trial. And afterwards, of course, Judge James, who was actually a buddy of mine, said, hey, Heller, I thought I'd ride your ass a little, get the jury feeling sorry for you. Yeah, fuck you. Not his intent, believe me. Here's another fun guerrilla tactic you can use. And before I move on, a couple more metaphors I like. Here's a great one. Like a blind man who, upon feeling an elephant's trunk, remarked, what a large snake. The point is this. When you don't see the entire picture, you get a very distorted view. The DA didn't want you to hear this, doesn't want you to consider that. They only want you to look at that trunk. And that's a very distorted view. I love a good cheesy metaphor. It's limitless. You can get them in church, you can get them in the Bible, you can get them on the internet. Use metaphors, use similes. It's how you communicate with people. It's really effective stuff. Okay, here's a fun one that probably never, ever happened. I heard this as a Percy Foreman story. I heard this as a Clarence Darrow story. That's why I'm suspicious of its veracity, but who cares if it's true? Let the legend live. You can tell us an old story, because it's about smoking in the courtroom. The story goes that whoever it was, Clarence Darrow or Percy Foreman, had prepared a cigar with a paper clip that they had straightened out and stuck right down the middle of the cigar. And when they finish their closing argument, they sit down, and the government gets up to give their side of the story, and Clarence Darrow lights that cigar. And by the time the government is halfway through their argument, there's 4 or 5 inches of ash hanging on the edge of that cigar. And the story goes, the whole jury's not listening to the prosecutor. They're watching that cigar to see when the ash is going to fall. Probably never happened, but there's all kinds of stuff you can do. I just pack up all my stuff. I talk to my client. That's how I handle it. And you don't want to be rude or obvious or disrespectful, but you don't want to sit there wrapped in attention to what the government has to say, because what they have to say is worthless. It means nothing, and give it no further attention than it deserves. Nothing. With a little luck, the jury will feel the same way. Now, whatever you do, do not ever miss the chance to do this in every single trial. It drives me crazy when I walk into court and I see a defense lawyer sitting 8 feet from his client like the guy smelled like crap. You ought to be sitting right next to the guy. You ought to have your arm around them. You need to be whispering in their ear, asking them questions. I don't care if your client is mentally retarded. You lean over him and you say, "You dumb son of a bitch, wake up." Make it look like you're talking about the case. Bring him in on the defense. Humanize him. Get him a notepad to take notes. Draw pictures. You want to present him as an involved human being, not some zoned out crackhead who doesn't really care what happens in his trial. Those physical things, they go a mile and a half. Here's another one right out of the article that we gave out today. Make damn sure your client's family is in the hallway. And during every jury break, if your client's not in custody, you sit him out there right in the middle of his big extended family. Have their arms around him. You want to send a message to that jury. This is no jailbird scumbag. This is somebody's son. This is somebody's husband. This is a decent human being with a family who's standing behind him, not just his paid mouthpiece. Use those little physical things, folks. You'd be amazed. They go a really, really long way. Put your arm around your client. Whisper in his ear. Make sure the family is there. All those visual cues.